The day Marcus's childhood sweetheart, Ashley, returned to the States after graduation, he held up a banner at the airport, making a high-profile declaration of his love. Everyone looked at me. After all, I was Marcus's fiancée. That evening, at Ashley's welcome banquet, she clung to Marcus, recounting how difficult things had been for her abroad all these years. "Marcus, I love you. Will you marry me?" Ashley gazed at Marcus through tear-filled eyes. My company colleagues and Marcus's friends all looked at me. In their eyes, I was nothing but a joke. Seeing that I was also staring at Marcus, Ashley provocatively looked at me and said, "Grace, you're completely out of your league for Marcus, he deserves the best. As for you, why don't you just go back to your rural hometown? How could Marcus possibly marry a hick like you?" I smiled faintly and said, "All right." She had no idea that I couldn't care less about Marcus. 6 months ago, Catherine told me she had arranged a family alliance for me, with Marcus. At the time, I was still teaching in Maple. Under his insistence, I reluctantly agreed to her request. After all, this was the husband Catherine had chosen for me. I promised Catherine I'd observe Marcus for 6 months. If, after that time, both Marcus and I were satisfied with each other, we'd get married. But ever since I came here, Marcus rarely paid any attention to me. In fact, he had always been so cold towards me. Even when I started working at Marcus's company, he only assigned me to the company receptionist desk. Everyone at the company knew about my engagement to Marcus. Many even openly mocked me, saying I was out of your league. Marcus didn't try to stop any of these comments. Instead, he was even colder towards me. I once called Catherine, and she said that if Marcus truly didn't like me, then I could come back. Just as I was about to make things clear with Marcus, Ashley arrived. Now, Catherine had no reason to keep me from going home. At this moment, I actually felt a lot happier. Even, who was ordering me around, seemed a lot cuter. "Marcus, are you planning to marry Ashley?" I looked at Marcus and asked. Hearing this, Marcus looked at me coldly and said, "Grace, what do you think? I don't know how you, a small-town girl, managed to convince my father to agree to an engagement with you. But my parents are abroad themselves, and they can't control me. What's more, I clearly love Ashley, and you're trying to butt in." He looked at me with utter disgust and said, "Just look at your clothes, do you even deserve me?" I heard Marcus's words and chuckled. I was just dressed casually. Besides, before I even met Marcus, I was teaching in the mountains. How could I possibly dress well in the mountains? Since didn't like me, I decided I would make things clear with him. "Marcus, since you don't like me, then let's just cancel our engagement, how about that?" I looked at Marcus, full of anticipation. When he heard my words, he spoke coldly, "Grace, I don't know what method you used, but my father is forcing me to marry you. If you want to cancel, you go talk to my father," he said, looking at me coldly. And I shook my head, saying, "Talk to your own parents yourself." I knew that Marcus didn't want to talk to William about this, as William had always disagreed with him being with Ashley. But since it was Marcus's own business, why should I bother with it? So, at that moment, I simply chose to ignore Marcus. Seeing my reaction, Marcus's face turned ashen. And, standing nearby, stared at me coldly and said, "Grace, you are utterly shameless. You say you're willing to break off the engagement, but you're unwilling to talk to Uncle about it. You just want to string Marcus along." I couldn't help but laugh at Ashley's words. I couldn't care less about Marcus. What's more, Marcus only had eyes for Ashley, so why would I cling to him? Anyway, I've made myself clear, Marcus. You go talk to your dad yourself. As for me, I'm leaving today. I stood up and looked at Marcus, speaking coldly. After saying that, I turned to leave. But the next second, Ashley grabbed me. She looked at me, full of rage, and then slapped me hard. "Grace, you little bitch, you don't want to break off the engagement with Marcus at all, yet you're pretending to be so righteous." As she spoke, she slapped me again. I was pressed to the ground and beaten by Ashley. At that moment, I turned to look at Ashley, my eyes filled with fury, and just watched. I struggled desperately, pushing Ashley away, trying to stand up. But the moment he saw me push Ashley away, Marcus immediately stood up and quickly kicked me. I was kicked by Marcus and fell to the ground, my face contorted in pain. At that moment, I turned to look at Marcus, my eyes filled with disappointment. Marcus, however, looked at me with a cold face and snarled, "Grace, how dare you hit Ashley?" "Marcus, Ashley hit me," I cried out. And just as I said that, the next moment, Marcus delivered another harsh slap. The blow was so hard I nearly fainted. At the same time, he kicked me again, sending me sprawling to the ground. I curled up on the ground in pain. The intense pain nearly made me pass out. Marcus, take me to the hospital. I yelled desperately, my voice barely a whisper. At that moment, I was so much in pain that I was about to faint, but looked at me with a cold expression. Marcus, I think she's just faking it. Ashley looked at me and said. Then, she directly pulled Marcus and walked away. The other people from the company also left with Ashley. To them, I was just a joke trying to cling to Marcus. Why would they care? I endured the severe pain and dialed Catherine's phone. Mom, help me, Marcus hurt me. I cried out hysterically into the phone. Then, I fainted from the pain. When I woke up, I was already in the hospital, and Catherine was by my side. She had a grim expression, looking at me with heartache. Catherine asked me what had happened. I told her everything, how Marcus had injured me and left me at the hotel. Hearing this, Catherine's expression grew even uglier. Marcus is too much. Catherine's face was full of self-reproach. She told me that William had pleaded with my father back then, which was why my father had agreed to our two families' family alliance. Furthermore, our family held the lifeline of the Shin family's finances. Because of this, Catherine thought the Shin family would take good care of me, but she never expected that I would be severely injured by Marcus. At that moment, Catherine, full of anger, declared, since the Shin family treated you like this, our family alliance with them is off. Not only that, I will make the Shin family pay a huge price. She looked at me and said, I'll arrange bodyguards to protect you. I'm going abroad to pull all investments from the Shin family. She looked at me and added, my daughter is not some punk like Marcus to be bullied. After saying that, Catherine stood up and left. She left more than a dozen bodyguards to protect me. The doctor told me that I was injured by Marcus and needed to stay in the hospital for a week. So, I stayed in the hospital. But I didn't expect Marcus to call me that afternoon. On the phone, Marcus's voice sounded particularly cold. Grace, what are you doing? Why aren't you at the company? Hearing this, I scoffed and said coldly, Marcus, I was severely injured by you last night and am still hospitalized. Why do you think I'm not at work? Hearing my words, Marcus spoke coldly, you're good at faking it. Grace, I'm telling you, you'd better get back to the company, or I'll make sure you regret it. To compete with Ashley, you'd even fake an illness. I heard Marcus's words over the phone and chuckled angrily. I was too tired to argue with him anymore. Marcus, I am truly injured. And you're the one who did it. I said indifferently, also, I don't plan on staying at your company anymore, so, Marcus, from now on, I quit. My icy voice rang out. Then, I hung up. But I didn't expect that as soon as I hung up, Ashley's call came in. Grace, Marcus doesn't like you at all. What's the use of faking an illness? I'm telling you, Grace, you'd better take the initiative and make things clear with Uncle. You and Marcus are not compatible at all, only I am the right match for Marcus. I listened to Ashley's words on the phone and chuckled, all right. I'll go make things clear with the Shin family. Now that Catherine had gone abroad, the Shin family would find out soon enough. So, that would count as making everything perfectly clear, right? Since you know, then hurry back to the company. Marcus has already made me the vice of the company. Come back right now and get me a coffee, Ashley said imperiously over the phone. And I listened to Ashley's words, smiling faintly, Ms. Ashley, I already told you, I've quit. After I hung up the phone, I turned it off and prepared to sleep. After all, talking to them was too exhausting. What's more, I was no longer willing to argue with them. However, I didn't expect that even though I wanted to stop, Marcus and Ashley weren't going to let me off. On my second day in the hospital, my room door was roughly forced open. Then, I saw Marcus and Ashley rush into my room. At that moment, Marcus's face was ashen, and he glared at me coldly, saying, Grace, I told you to come to work, why didn't you? I looked up at Marcus. Ashley was beside him. Marcus, I told her to come to work, but she refused, saying she was your wife and that once she married you, she'd fire me. Ashley cried out from the side. And I, hearing Ashley's words, couldn't help but roll my eyes. Marcus, I've made it clear to you, I'm injured and need to be hospitalized. Also, you're the one who injured me, and I reserve the right to pursue this matter. I looked at Marcus and said, and from now on, I'm no longer an employee of your company. So, please leave my room. My icy voice rang out, but it made Marcus and Ashley's faces particularly grim. I even saw Marcus, with an ashen face, glaring at me fiercely, I'm the company's CEO. I haven't approved your resignation. I order you, get back to the company immediately. Besides, do you think faking an injury like this will allow you to sue me? I looked at Marcus and sighed. Without speaking further, I pulled out my phone and sent a message. Catherine had arranged bodyguards for me, and to avoid disturbing my rest, they were in the next room. Now, it was time to call them over. Seeing that I didn't respond to him and even pulled out my phone to use it, Marcus's face turned even uglier. He rushed forward, ready to snatch my phone. At the same time, he wanted to slap me. But just as he charged, a large group of people suddenly burst in from behind. These people immediately rushed to my front, blocking Marcus. "Miss, are you all right?" Several bodyguards looked at me and asked. "I'm fine. Call the police for me," I said coldly. First, he hit me at Ashley's welcome banquet, and now, he wanted to hit me again. I couldn't let him get away with it. The bodyguards immediately began calling the police. Marcus's face became extremely grim as he looked at me and said, "Grace, what do you mean? And who are they?" "They are my bodyguards." I looked at Marcus and said coldly, "Marcus, yesterday you beat me and sent me to the hospital, and today you're still provoking me, so I have no choice but to call the police." Hearing my words, Marcus chuckled. "Grace, where did you find these thugs, pretending to be bodyguards? Now, you're even faking an illness to sue me. It looks like you're trying to extort money from me." Listening to Marcus's confident words, I was too tired to argue with him further. "Marcus, I am the Shin family heiress. Your family was given financial backing by mine, so why would I need to extort money from you?" As soon as my words fell, Marcus and Ashley burst into laughter. "Grace, are you saying you're the Shin family heiress? Look at yourself, with your shabby appearance, how could you possibly be a Shin family heiress? The family is the richest family in this city." Ashley sneered. I didn't speak, just looked at her and Marcus with icy eyes. To me, they were utterly repulsive. By now, I was even too lazy to speak to them further. At that moment, I directly stated, "You'll soon find out if I'm the Shin family heiress." The bodyguards told me they had already called, and the police would arrive soon. Hearing that I had actually called the police, Marcus's face immediately darkened. "Marcus, don't be scared, she's definitely faking it. What's more, with her shabby appearance and dark tan, how could she be the Shin family heiress?" I smiled hearing Ashley's words. I had been teaching in the mountains. The temperatures there were high, and the sun was particularly scorching, so I got quite tanned during that time. Now, I had recovered a lot, but compared to before, my skin was still a bit darker. Perhaps it was for this reason, coupled with the fact that I was dressed like a country girl when Marcus first saw me, that he treated me this way. However, even if I wasn't the Shin family heiress, Marcus shouldn't have treated me like that. At that moment, looking at Marcus, my eyes were filled only with disgust. Soon, the police arrived. Before they could even ask any questions, Ashley eagerly blurted out, "Officers, we're calling to report. This woman is faking an injury to extort us." Hearing's words, the officers turned their gaze to me. I calmly had the bodyguards present a medical report. The report showed I had internal injuries, and even a fractured rib. At the same time, I had the bodyguards play the security camera footage from the banquet hall last night. This was the first thing I had the bodyguards do after I woke up. Marcus had no idea that the banquet hall's security camera footage was already in my hands. "Officers, these two conspired to murder me. If my family hadn't arrived in time, I would have died," I said indifferently. Hearing my words, Ashley and Marcus's faces immediately changed. "Grace, you are absolutely disgusting. Over such a small matter, you're claiming Marcus tried to kill you." At that moment, Ashley shouted at me. But I completely ignored Ashley and instead looked at the police, saying, "Even if it's not murder, it's definitely intentional battery." Hearing this, the police nodded, took the evidence, and directly took Marcus and Ashley away. I knew that for something like this, Marcus would probably be fine, but it was enough to keep him from bothering me for a week. Otherwise, being annoyed by the two of them every day would make me even more uncomfortable. That evening, I received a phone call from Catherine. Catherine told me she had arrived abroad and had already begun withdrawing financial backing from the Shin family. At the same time, Catherine had also contacted many people. Since treated me this way, then the Shin family naturally wouldn't have a good outcome. After told me to rest well, she hung up the phone. In the following days, I indeed had a peaceful life. Marcus was in detention. Many things happened during his detention. The family suffered numerous setbacks. Their funds were pulled, and even their orders were cancelled. Their stock price plummeted. When found Catherine, he learned that Marcus had actually beaten me severely. At that moment, William was furious. He called Marcus, but Marcus was still in detention and couldn't be reached. William begged Catherine to spare the Shin family, even promising that Marcus would treat me well after we were married. But I had already been beaten by Marcus and sent to the hospital. How could I possibly marry him? As for Catherine, she directly threw William out of the house. She didn't need a son-in-law like that. The family's stock price continued to plummet. Not only that, but after Marcus's absence, Shin family's company couldn't operate, and with their current situation, the employees didn't know what to do. Eventually, they called me. I'm just the company receptionist. Marcus also said Ashley is the boss's wife. You don't need to call me. I refused coldly. Then, I stopped caring. However, soon, William returned to the States. He first posted bail for Marcus, then brought Marcus to find me. Grace, Marcus was a bit impulsive, and he was misled by Ashley. I promise, after you and Marcus get married, he'll definitely treat you well. I looked at William before me, smiling exceptionally falsely. He clearly knew his son didn't like me, yet he still forced Marcus to come. As for Marcus, his face was cold, yet helpless. Grace, I did make a mistake in this matter. But you're also at fault. If you hadn't hidden your identity, I wouldn't have thought you were beneath me, Marcus said. And I scoffed at his words. Marcus, now, you're beneath me. I looked at Marcus and said coldly, gentlemen, please leave. I need to rest. William's face changed. The family was now on the brink of collapse. Having lost Catherine's financial backing and being targeted by Catherine, the Shin family couldn't even secure orders anymore. Not only that, but now that banks were aware of the Shin family's situation, they were starting to demand repayment of loans. Under such circumstances, the Shin family's wealth was continuously shrinking. William had returned hoping to bypass Catherine, wishing Marcus and I would marry. That way, all problems would be resolved. Unfortunately, he had no idea that his son had no interest in me whatsoever. Mr. Shin, my engagement with Marcus has been cancelled. I looked at William and said indifferently, he loves Ashley, not me. Besides, our Shin family isn't desperate for a husband. There's no need for me to settle for a man like him and compromise myself. My words made William's face turn grim. He still wanted to say something to me, but I was too tired to argue with him anymore. I had the bodyguards escort him out. Afterward, I instructed the bodyguards to handle my discharge from the hospital. After all, the doctor had said I could be discharged, though I still needed to recuperate at home. I thought I had made everything perfectly clear to the Shin family, and they wouldn't bother me anymore. But I didn't expect Marcus to seek me out a few days later. He looked at me, his face cold, and said, Grace, you've caused enough trouble. Our wedding will proceed as scheduled. I looked at Marcus before me and scoffed. Marcus, didn't I make myself clear to you? I have no interest in you, and please don't bother me anymore. I looked at Marcus, my face full of disgust. Marcus, I've already made it clear to you that our engagement has been cancelled. Hearing me say that, Marcus's face darkened. He looked at me coldly and said, Grace, aren't you just trying to force me to marry you? I've already agreed, so why are you still pretending? As long as you get your Catherine to keep investing in our family business, I'll marry you. I know you don't like Ashley, I'll make Ashley leave and go abroad. He looked at me, a hint of reluctance on his face. And looking at Marcus, I was speechless. I had told him more than once that I didn't like him. Moreover, just because he hit me, there was no way I would marry him. Now, I had no idea how he could be so confident. Seeing that I didn't speak, Marcus's face grew even grimmer. Grace, I know you had your Catherine do this to force me to marry you, didn't you? I've already agreed, what more do you want? He looked at me and said. And I, hearing Marcus's words, chuckled. He actually thought that my family did all of this just to coerce him. He should take a look at himself. What's more, with Marcus being the way he was, how could I possibly feel secure marrying him? The person I would marry would definitely not be him. At that moment, I looked at Marcus and said cold. Marcus, the reason our family cancelled our cooperation with yours is because you hit me, not to force you to marry me. Also, I know you like Ashley. I looked at Marcus and said coldly, so, you don't need to pretend to want to marry me in front of me. What's more, do you think I'd believe you'd love me for a lifetime, even if you did want to marry me? My words made Marcus's face turn ashen. He looked at me and said, Grace, people like us are meant for family alliance anyway. We can just live separate lives after we get married. I looked at Marcus and chuckled, even so, I wouldn't need to find you. You said it yourself, it's a family alliance. Why wouldn't I find someone from a better family than yours? Instead of sacrificing my family's resources to help yours? I looked at Marcus, full of mockery. Back then, Catherine thought that because the Shin family relied on our family for everything, they would cherish and love me if I married Marcus. That's why she wanted me to marry him. But what did it amount to? Now, there was even less chance I would marry Marcus. Because I knew that even if I married him, I wouldn't be happy afterward. What's more, with the shamelessness of his family, I was afraid they would still try to scheme against me after marriage. Given that, how could I possibly seek out Marcus? Marcus eventually left, disheartened. He knew I wouldn't marry him. Shortly after Marcus left, the Shin family began to extensively sold off assets. I knew the Shin family truly couldn't hold on anymore. Catherine told me that the Shin family's current situation was almost equivalent to bankruptcy. Their outstanding debt was very high. For years, William had wanted Marcus to marry me, precisely for my family's hefty dowry. However, he never expected Marcus to give up everything for Ashley. His and Ashley's assault on me was awaiting a court hearing and verdict. With sufficient evidence, coupled with my injuries, Marcus and Ashley were both sentenced to 3 months in detention. This was undoubtedly an even greater blow to the Shin family. William even publicly announced that he had disowned his son Marcus, then left the States. After all, if it hadn't been for Marcus, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Moreover, as far as I knew, Marcus had another brother, so even if William disowned Marcus, he still had a son. As for me, Catherine brought me back home. After this incident, Catherine never forced me to marry again. Instead, she told me that our family could support me, and that I should just find someone I genuinely liked. If I couldn't find anyone, then I didn't have to marry. I had no objection to this. A few months later, I had fully recovered, and Catherine began letting me try to take over company operations. I gradually took over many company responsibilities and started focusing on my career. The family had now liquidated most of their domestic assets, and many of their assets were acquired by Catherine's company. One day, I returned to Marcus's old company, which had now become my family's company. When I entered, I saw my former colleagues. They looked at me, heads bowed, afraid to speak. After all, I used to be their target of ridicule, a gold digger trying to marry into a rich family, but now I was the high and mighty Chin family heiress. I had no good feelings for these people. I instructed the HR department to dismiss them one by one. They were given a sufficient severance package, so it was a relatively amicable separation. Many regretted it and wanted to plead with me, but they found that I simply ignored them. After these people left, I unexpectedly received news. Marcus and Ashley had been released from prison. On the day of their release, when Ashley learned of Marcus's situation, she immediately kicked him aside and ran off with her bag. She went abroad, and Marcus was now penniless, struggling even to eat. His former friends had also distanced themselves. With no other options, he had to work manual labor at construction sites, doing the hardest and most exhausting work. He couldn't even do that well, constantly having his wages docked. Eventually, due to physical exhaustion, he had an accidental fall from a building and was found dead. When learned of this, he specifically returned to the States to collect Marcus's body. A few days later, Ashley, who was abroad, was suddenly kidnapped. When her body was found, it was at a construction site. She had been pushed from a building and died from the fall. When I heard this news, I smiled faintly. I didn't care about anything related to Marcus. After all, I had my own path to follow and my own life to live.